is called Freemasonry 101. And it's just some basic general information. Not working.
When you touch the arrow.
Oh, the arrow. The arrow. Okay. All right. It's just some basic information that this is not really for you to go in and say, I have all the answers. This is really not for you to go, you know, I know everything about all the history of Masonry, and I'm now an expert. The entire purpose of this presentation is no more than to pique your interest so that you will go off and explore to see if I've fibbed to you in any way. To go off and enthuse you to go off and look at some of the things that make our history and make us who we are and what we are today. And so in doing so, we're going to cover a few things. We're going to talk about a little history. We're going to talk about a little philosophy, a little political science, a little civics. We're going to talk about some ethics, and we're going to talk about religion, and a couple of other, we're going to call them electives. We're going to start with world history. How old is Masonry? If you're thinking I can trace our history all the way back to King Solomon, brethren and ladies and guests, nobody can take our actual history and trace it back that far. There's no documentation that says King Solomon was a Mason, or that Hiram Abiff was anything more than the builder that he was, as is defined in the Bible. There were no 3, 5, and 7 groups of extraordinary Masons that controlled the building of King Solomon's temple. So it's not, this class is not going to go that far back. It's not documented, though it's a really good way to trace ethical behavior if you want to get it well grounded. That's a great place to start. But it does not have any basis in fact. Where do we truly start?
1717 at England.
How about 926 AD? We are a very old group. If you want to take your factual foundations of when Masonry as an operative guild truly began. The first king of England, the first king of United England, nice guy, beat up all the rest of the kingdoms and consolidated all of England. Okay? Worked with the group of lodges of Masons. They formed lodges so that they could pass on the skills that they had to their apprentices, typically their sons. And it was very, very secret. You did not share your skill set to anybody and everybody. So back during that time, 926 AD, is the first record of guilds being operative within Masons, and there's documentation for that. In 1390, there's the Regis manuscript. And what that really does is the King of England at the time goes, you guys are out of control, and there is no standard work. You want me to say that again? Standard work. Why are all the Masons looking down? Okay. That king began working with those particular lodges and go, you will have a standard so that regardless of which guild you are, we can rely on the quality of your work. And in 1390, there was nothing, brethren, nothing that did not have a religious overtone to it. Everything was for the glory of God. You put a brick on top of a brick, it was in the name and by Almighty God. That's just the time. the period that was going on. About 1640 is where you began to get the admission of non-operative Masons. And you have to understand the political and religious tone of the time to understand why that might even be. If everything you do is for the glory of God, and you've got new brainiacs out there thinking about stuff not related to Masonry, building cathedrals and stuff, who are you going to hang out with in the hood? I mean, in the first place, most of these guys are being persecuted for heresy. So you don't want to go talk to your pope or your priest. You could be swinging by morning. And I don't mean that kind of swinging. You would have been called a heretic and tried and executed before you had dinner. So who are you going to hang out with? You're going to hang out with the only other people that have a similar skill set. I mean, think about it. Gangs. What are gangs today? They have one thing in common: self-protection. Freemasons, if you go by the true definition of the word, qualify as a gang because we have common interest, similar interest, shared values. Well, back in the 1600s, the only other people you could talk to, if you're talking about the sun being the center of the universe and not everything swinging around the earth, are similar people that have similar skills. Who are the people that can take the concept of a dinner napkin and say, we're going to take this concept and we're going to build a grand cathedral because we know geometry and nobody else does? Nobody else? No, nobody else does. The priests know how to read and write in Latin, and I got to tell you, I took Latin in the 9th grade. I hated it. I hated it so bad that in the front cover of my book, I wrote the following: Latin is a dead language, dead as it can be. First it killed the Romans, and now it's killing me. You have guys that understand math and geometry, not adding and subtracting, counting chickens in exchange for corn, but they can take a design and build a grand cathedral. And if you begin to think about how the earth spins around the sun in the different seasons, what kind of mathematical skill do you use to figure all that out? How many days in a calendar, how many months in a year? 10th question. Geometry. How far is the curvature of the earth? Geometry. How far do we have to sail before we fall off the edge? Geometry. So these guys, these heretics, need somebody to talk to. It's not the priesthood, so they come talking to the Masons. And now let me remind you also that at that particular time, religion was embedded in everything that you do. And it just is a natural step. That if you see a builder, a brick stone layer, holding a trowel and he is spreading cement to make the next natural assumption that that trowel is what holds the whole world together symbolically. That there is cement between the Heavenly Father and us, and between us and our brother. A trowel. They applied religious and spiritual meaning to all of the working tools. And that carries forward today. And has been so pervasive that even today, when we go in and you got a really good deal on that Toyota, you had square deal. And that everybody meets on the level. Continuing on. You have to hit the button. Again.
Hit it harder.
Come on it.
It's not much. There. See, now it goes. All right. Yep, there we go. So, as this progresses, about 1660, you see a whole shift of speculative people, non-builders, coming into our guilds. So that now as you have the standards, and by the way, those Regis manuscript not only laid out a standard for work, but it laid out moral standards and religious standards. It just was a natural assumption that the independent guys that now are following along the same standards wanted to manage and control themselves as opposed to the monarchy. And so they formed, what year? I heard it before. 1717, formed their own Grand Lodge for their own self-government. Also within this time frame, what religion were you?
Baptist.
Ooh, not 1640.
Oh, okay.
Martin Luther put the thesis on 1619, so that's when things start to break up.
Things were beginning to break up, and you had factions and fictions, not fictions, but factions going on, and your religion was the religion of your ruler. Why? You were not an independent person. You were, and I love the word, chattel. You were chattel. You didn't own your own life. So if the king was deposed, and that happened a lot, if the next king was Catholic, by George, you were Catholic. And you better not be anything else. And then when he was deposed and you were Church of England, presto changeo. You didn't even need to be baptized. All of a sudden, you've got a new religion. The political and religious turmoil of that particular period drove Masonry to be a little bit more circumspect on who they let in. And so they actually went out soliciting membership. Of the local pig farmer? No. But they began to bring in all the intelligentsia, and to save themselves, they began to bring in the monarchy. Monarchy couldn't read, write, or anything, but they were protection. Who's going to go mess with the king if he's a member of your boys' club? Make sense? Absolutely. And so you see a lot of royalty becoming Grand Masters. It's just a result of the time. Okay? 1726, the Grand Lodge of England, of all England. Now wait a minute. Remember who were the four lodges that formed up to become the Grand Lodge? Anybody remember? Let me give you some names. The Rummer and Grapes, the Crown, the Apple Tree, and I save this one for last, the Goose and Gridiron. Guys, these sound like names of lodges to you? Stillicum number, Everett number 137.
They were
Bars. They were taverns. You got to think that they were doing more than just doing ritual. They were becoming very fit, lifting weights.
table lodges.
They were table lodges, exactly. They were table lodges. And the way they operated, there's a book out called The Mason's Words. You ought to read it. It's wonderful. What they were doing in that particular time is they were doing what we know as the posting lectures and the degree lectures by rote memory. And they were keeping those meetings very, very short. That was their knowledge transfer. And then they were going downstairs and having fun. Their meetings were very, very short. They were doing the posting lectures, and then they were going down having fun. What are we doing today? Kind of like the opposite. But how many hundreds of years was that the norm? word of mouth transfer of the secrets, if you will, our lectures, and then going down and having fun. It all started off in, yeah. Masonry caught on. I really truly think it had something to do with the exercise that they were getting in these bars, that everybody wanted to form their own Grand Lodge. And all of a sudden, before you look around, there's the Grand Lodge of England, and then there's the Grand Lodge of France, separate. And then there's the Grand Lodge of England in France. Why, whoa, where does all this stuff come from? Why would you have a Grand Lodge of England in France? Where do you think the name Freemason came from? There were very few people that were allowed to travel. Why? Because you did not own your life, you were chattel. And yet, anybody can be a pig farmer. Anybody can raise crops, or cattle, or whatever. But if you have a special skill such as masonry and understand geometry, you're in high demand. And if the king next door needs to borrow you for a little bit, and that's going to form some sort of alliance to keep you from invading, take them. With my goodwill. Freemasons were free to travel. And now they go over into France, and they take their lodges with them. And you get Grand Lodges of England all over the place. But, I like this, but it's a long pause. There we go. I think we've already been there. Cool. Oh, got to tell you, Scotland. The actual hard copy documentation for Scotland of a truly Masonic lodge is Kilwinnie number
0.
0. Oldest lodge, and I'll give you a date here in just a second. How about they have records and documentation going back to 1140. You're a lot older than you think. You're recognizable as Masonic lodges from 1717, but you're a lot older than most people realize. Okay? But let's talk about American history. That kind of affects us. How old is lodges? How old were lodges in the colonies? Because we weren't the Americans at that time. I got to let you know. There were Masons that had been documented aboard Christopher Columbus's ship. I don't know that they held a lodge aboard ship or when they got over here, but they have proof that there were a couple of the sailors, officers. Remember, officers, remember the geometry piece? Where are we? Oh, let me get out the section in the geometry and I'll let you know. Okay? That were actual Masons. Masonry has been here since the very beginning of, as some people like to call it, the European invasion. Okay? And as soon as they began to colonize, they began to form lodges. They brought their masonry with them. They brought their religion and their masonry with them. Let me say that again. Their religion and their masonry with them. Because the two were almost inseparable. They shared the same values. So you can't really separate religion from masonry except the way that we currently do it today. And it's got to make you wonder, why is that? And we'll find out in just a minute. From the early exploration, who remembers when we were discovered, when we were invaded?
1492.
1492. When were we first beginning to get colonized?
1607, Virginia.
Right? So in the 1700s, things are beginning to move along. Masonry really took off. You had explosive growth in the late 1700s and the early 1800s. How many of our signers of the Declaration of Independence were Masons? 14. Why? brethren. Huh?
They were free thinkers.
They were free thinkers. And they were taking the concepts of lodge operation, in which everybody was equal, and yet there was a central authority or central responsibility. And they applied those principles to the government. And so those free thinkers, those Masonic thinkers, are the ones that got busy, talked, and began to figure out how to make a government of the people, for the people, by the people. And it all comes from Masonry. You're living your Masonry and your government of today.
Oh, please.
Huh? Well, we would hope that they could go back, don't you? Now, has it been smooth sailing? No. Masonry has had its ups and downs. Masonry will continue to have its ups and downs. Lodges will continue to have ups and downs. It's part of all of the basic cycle of life. But we took a hit. We as Masons took a big hit in 1826. It's called the Morgan Affair. You had a disgruntled guy who goes, I'm going to go join a lodge because there's financial benefit if I do so. And in some cases, that's true. The lodges of the period would have been set up to help anybody that was indigent. And he first comes in and he gets entered apprentice and goes, I've arrived and I need a loan. And he gets a loan and he doesn't pay it back. And then they began to harass him for the repayment, because back in those days, loans were exactly that. You had to pay them back. And so they said, well, if you don't pay it back, you can't be a Mason, we'll kick you out. And he goes, if you kick me out, I'll write about all the secrets. Wait a minute, we have some penalties for doing that, including death. Ooh, that sounds a little severe, doesn't it? If you tell the secrets, I'm going to kill you? Well, that's what my dad told me. Hey, Dad, who are you Masons and what do you do? I can tell you, but I have to kill you and make another one just like you. Scared my mother. The story is that he was abducted and put in jail, debtor's prison, and that a group of Masons, his lodge brothers, came by, paid his bail, put him in the back of a wagon, took him across the border to Canada, gave him $50 on a horse, and told him never to show his face in town ever again, because nobody ever saw Morgan again. The other story is they took him out and drowned him. I'm hoping for the first excuse. But what happened after that? So you got one guy and he just kind of disappeared. There were a lot of people that really were suspicious of Masonry because they kept their secrets so tightly, so close, right, and didn't share them with anybody. And as soon as you do that, as soon as you tell somebody you have a secret, what happens? Somebody wants to know. And if it's that much of a secret and you're not part of the club, they must be doing something sneaky, illegal. And if it's so secret, it must be bad, right? So they were looking for an excuse to really work over the Masons. And now you've got a guy that's disappeared. So they go over and they arrest, hang on, 26 men. 26 of them, arrest them for kidnapping and abduction. Not murder. The guys, there's no body. So there's no proof that they've done anything. None of them. None of the charges were murder. And everybody got off with a light jail sentence. Everybody got off with a light jail sentence. And then it kind of comes to light that the judge, the jury, the prosecutor were all Masons. Oops. Uh-oh, trouble. Now, doesn't that sound like a conspiracy to you? And a newspaper publisher who had been trying to break the Masons for a long time began to publish a series of articles saying that it was a conspiracy and that they were trying to take over the world, and that we should all be very careful and not associate Masons. And he was so convincing, that some Grand Lodges closed, lodges folded, Masonry went underground for a long, long time. He was so convincing that for the first time in our history, there were 3 political parties. 3. And guess who number 3 was? Anti-Masonic. And they did rather well. There's a couple of senators. Let me go back and check my notes. Let's see. There was William Hurt was running for president, and he carried the states of Vermont. He got 8% of the national vote on an anti-Masonic platform. That party also elected governors for Pennsylvania and Vermont, as well as a number of U.S. congressmen. They were very influential. The membership just dropped from about 400,000 to under 100,000 overnight. Masonry went underground. To rebuild their reputation, to rebuild their name, they instituted a bunch of things to save themselves. Remember, they're still meeting in taverns. That's out. We are now going to be sober, just, and upright Masons. Revelry, gone. No more parties. We are going to become socially aware and publicly good people. We're not going to talk about religion, politics. We'll go so far as to forbid their conversation in our lodges. There will be no better person than a Mason, all because of the bad reputation that we've gotten from poor Mr. Morgan. Think about it. The things that we do today have been that pervasive that even today, in a lot of grand jurisdictions, no alcohol is allowed in a lodge room. Washington is one of those. In a lodge room. You can have it next door, not in a lodge room. We inform our candidates. We will not discuss religion or politics. All because of that. All right, one more. Next page. It was very, very slow for us to regain our reputation. I mean, it's easy to get sullied. It's really, really difficult to get ourselves back a clean bill of health, if you will. So, all through the 1840s, we were slowly rebuilding. Here's your candidates: William Hurt, Andrew Jackson, and Henry Clay. See, I got busy and I forgot to push the button. Let's get caught up real quick. But after that, things really, really took off. In 1920, there were 3 million Masons in this country. 3 million. During World War II, or at the immediate end of that, growth just spurted. We'll talk about that in just a second. So that by 1959, there were 4 million Masons. 4 million. Why such an explosive growth after World War II? I can't answer that, but I can give you my opinion, my theory, because it applies to my father. My father, as a young man, grew up on a farm. He joined the Royal Canadian Air Force and went to Europe. He enjoyed Europe. He had a good time. There was culture, there was dancing, there was stuff that you can't get on the farm. And when he got out of the Air Force, he comes back and he looks at my grandfather and he goes, "Farmer, I don't think so." People left the farms in droves and went to the cities. Now they're not getting up at sunrise with the chickens, nor are they going to bed with the cows. They got time on their hands. As a matter of fact, they got more time than they know what to do with. We better join something. So all of the social groups, the Alliance, all of the charitable groups, experienced huge growth, and we were among them. And then here come the 60s. How many people were born in the 40s?
40s?
Yeah, 50s.
Great.
Anybody remember the term anti-establishment? You cannot make me do the stuff that my dad did. As a matter of fact, if he did it, I'm headed in absolutely the opposite direction. And so in the 60s, you began to see a decline, in the 70s and 80s. And it's just now that we are beginning to see, if not decline, at least we're holding our own. There's more changes on the way. Let's talk about who some of the famous Masons are. Because we all know George Washington, we all know the Marquis de Lafayette. By the way, the Marquise, if you want an apron done, she does really nice work. Paul Revere. I mean, you know all these names, right? These are the famous guys. But did you also know 14 presidents, 9 signers, all of the guys that were really, really well known in that particular period, in the 1800s and the early 1900s? If you go back and look, they were leaders and movers and shakers, not only in the political arena, but in science and art. Let's go look at some of them. Come on, there's the presidents. You didn't know some of these guys were, did you? Right? You got George Washington, you got Andrew Jackson, Kinley, Roosevelt, Taft. I mean, the list goes on. I'm going to move along quickly here because I'm running. More of the presidents. Oh, really? Everybody knows Truman. Did you know Ford?
Yep.
Good.
I was thinking about Franklin.
Know these guys?
Go back one.
Oh, go back one.
Guy down the lower left hand, right hand corner.
Sam Houston?
Yep.
It isn't Houston.
Travis is a Mason too.
Yeah, oh, there's, I just picked out the top ones that we would kind of recognize.
Don't pronounce his name Houston. It's Houston. It's Dutch.
Did you know him personally? Really?
I just know if you go to New York and you ask for Houston Street, they'll look at you and they'll say, huh?
Yeah.
It's Houston Street.
There's a big statue of
Oh, yeah.
down there where you can see the USS Texas.
Yeah. Okay.
Big statue.
Recognize these guys?
It's Matthew Henson, he's black.
So let's go. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's move over it and let's see how Masonry kind of moves. Every time somebody loaded up a wagon and goes, it's getting too flipping crowded around here. The neighbors just moved in within 10 miles. We're out of here. Right? Every time they moved west, just like they moved out of Europe, they took their masonry with them. There's documented proof that as Masons moved and they go, the wheel just fell off the wagon, this is now home. Or the horse died. Documented that in a lot of cases, the first building that they built was a Masonic lodge. Not a school, not city hall, not jail, a Masonic lodge. Typically 2 stories with the school and the city hall underneath. And you go into a lot of these old pioneer towns, they may have been the only 2-story building in town. Huh? Bannock, Montana is a good example. Masonry moved every time some person moved. You should take the time to go explore how Masonry moved, and your lodge got to be where it is today. Let's just take a look at Washington. We all came from the Grand Lodge of Oregon. I don't know that how, if they are free and ancient free and accepted Masons, AF and AM, that we're just F and AM. My suspicion is that we actually gave the A to Canada. A. Okay.
Reading the first year of the minutes of Union City Lodge number 27. It says Union City Lodge number 27, AFN AM, and it's written that way for the first year. Then it says last AF and AM. Next page, first F and AM.
Yeah. I think it was a typo, except we were writing it out. And somebody just took a shortcut. Go explore it. Go find out why that is. I traced my ancestry from Everett Lodge all the way back up. And so there's my pedigree. We all came from the Grand Lodge of England, otherwise we wouldn't be regular. You like that? Okay, great. So there in a lot of lodges will show you your history. If not, I think, I know in the Grand Lodge office, and I know that you can actually find this sort of, and you can go trace your own pedigree. Somewhere along the line, there were a number of lodges up in what we now refer to as Alaska. And they formed the 5 or 6 lodges, decided that Seattle and those guys were just out of control and way too far, and they formed their own Grand Lodge. But that's their pedigree. We came from Oregon. Alaska came from us. Take the time to go find it. Let's talk about a little philosophy. How much time have I got? Am I over?
Keep going.
9:25.
Keep going.
The next session starts at 10, it's 9:20.
Thank you. Okay. Here's a quote. You don't have to write this down. I don't know that this is in the book. Is it?
No.
I don't think so.
Nothing in the book.
I know.
Isn't that working?
It's secret. It's all mine. It's all the thing about you. Every lasting organization, whether it's civic or whether it's fraternal, political, religious, or whatever, everyone began with a commitment to some sort of idealism or ideology. Everyone that's ever lasted. Oh, there have been some that come 6 months later, the meeting stopped and off they go. But think about it. Think about the Scouts. Been around for centuries. Committed to, right? Thank you. Thanks, Fred. I knew that you were there. You're a good scout, dude.
50 years.
Everyone. Nazism. Catholic Church. Everyone, without exception. What do you think that does for us? Remember we talked about last night, for some of us, that you needed to develop a 30-second speech to a non-Mason of why you became a Mason. I hope some of you stayed up last night and did that. Because if you don't have one other than just a standard fare, you need that. And if you need to look a little bit further just to get your creative juices flowing, there's our philosophy. Brotherly love, relief, truth. This is part of our basic tenets. Tolerance, universal benevolence, self-improvement, civility, civic responsibility. Brethren, wouldn't it be great, and what would the world be like if everybody used those tenets? We are not a religion, and yet I cannot think of a single organization that is more spiritual in nature than Freemasonry. You'll find every religion that believes in a single deity, you'll find Masons there. I'm running short of time. Come on. Okay. Let's talk about political science. Masonic conversations must be non-political, and we've already discovered why that is. Name me a more patriotic group than the Freemasons. I can give you one. Scouts. Scouts are very, very patriotic. I don't know that they're more patriotic than us, right?
American Legion.
Huh?
American Legion.
Patriotic, truly.
They
I think
started out that way.
Ah, there you go. I think Fred, I think you're absolutely correct. I think they started out with the best of intentions and they've kind of gone south a little bit. Okay? If you go take a sample of people that actually bother to go vote, you'll find that the numbers are higher for Masons than for other groups, based off sample. I don't know that they queried all of us, but we're more politically astute. And we believe Masonry over any other sorts of ideology. And why would that might be? Why might that be? Brethren, you cannot find a more diverse group than Freemasons that have and share a common set of values, excluding their religion and their political. We extend beyond any ideology to make ourselves brothers and sisters. If you do that, and you do that on a consistent basis, what are the benefits that you're going to get out of that association? Not only do we get to call ourselves brothers and sisters, not only do we get to share the title, I am a Freemason, but you can count on wherever you go, anywhere you go, you can count on the friendship of other Masons. You can bank on that. If you have a difference of opinion, it was red, it was green, officer, you can count on them at least listening and respecting the other's opinion. And you can count on that if I have it and you need it, I'll share it. That's what sets us all apart. We're going to get into some good stuff. Let's talk about some civics. Something that we mentioned a little bit earlier, Resolution 1986-3. There is no person that is more supportive of Masonry and has probably caused more men to become Masons than my wife, Vicki. Why? Because she is not bound by that requirement that you cannot solicit for membership. We can't throw her out.
Sorry, guys.
She can't be expelled or suspended. She is the one that we really rely on, and all you ladies, to go, you see my husband? He's good people. And part of that is because he has the support of Masons and carries in his heart all the Masonic virtues. But that does not keep you from going over and saying, you look like a Mason, you smell like a Mason, you're not paying your dues. Have you ever thought about becoming a Mason? If in your heart you know a good person of good character and upstanding moral significance, there's nothing wrong. 1986-3, that if you know somebody that is worthy and well qualified, the Mason in his heart, to go over and ask him, point blank, all right, eyeball to eyeball, have you ever thought about becoming a Mason? You've been authorized, and so many of us don't go take that opportunity. But now here's the warning that comes along with it. If you do so, you assume the responsibility for the rest of your brethren of your lodge. You assume the responsibility of going, I know him well enough and I trust him enough to call him brother, bring him in. And as anyone that went to the 6 steps to a petition learned where we used to know everybody. You know a farmer and his son and his whole family right down the street because they didn't go anywhere and were there for generation after generation after generation. We don't have that luxury today. We have to take that philosophy and make it more modern. You need to do your work up front and get to know that person so that you can, with confidence, say, he will make a good brother. That's now your responsibility. The Grand Lodge will help, by the way, because we've redone the petition and investigation forms to kind of lead you in that direction. And the 6 steps, brethren, we're going to make available to the lodges that choose to use it. And I highly recommend that you do for your own benefit. Fred?
Well, one of the things that I don't like is this, to be one, ask one. I think a better saying would be, make a friend, be a friend, bring a friend to Masonry.
Fred just got into the bumper sticker business.
But I mean, to be one, ask one, you're going to be asked by a lot of people, but you may not know that individual if he is your friend, if he's not your friend.
Yeah.
And that way you can easily vouch for a man, you know, because he's a friend, you know him.
True.
That's what it
True.
entails.
Okay. Thanks, Fred. You need to be ready to help. You need to know that he is a brother. Did you get that? Did you want me to hold it up? Okay. Every Mason should understand not only the duties, his duties and his responsibilities to the lodge, but if you're going to bring somebody in, making sure that they also know. That you need to make sure that you can explain why you became a Mason, why it's important to you on a personal level, and then be able to explain to him how we're organized and how we're structured. Wouldn't it be bad if he comes in and goes, oh, we're a bunch of Masons, and we're all on the level. And the first thing he does is goes, I want to be president. Well, no, it doesn't quite work out that way. You need to make sure that he understands coming in. I hate reading to people. Everybody got it? Ready to move on? Here's the electives. Let's talk about some current events. You need to know what's going on in your lodge. Rather than if you're, I'm talking to the wrong group here. You guys are the future leaders of our lodges and you know what's going on in your lodges, but think of your brethren that don't go to lodge anymore for whatever reason. You need to ask them why, understand what it was they're looking for, and get them back into lodge. You need to understand that from our very, very earliest beginnings, back up in the taverns, the families were deeply involved. All through the 1800s, Masonry was a family thing. Oh, they didn't come to the meetings, but the picnics and the baseball games and the bowling and the darts and all the rest of that involved all of the families. And if their lodges were giving their instruction by just giving the lectures and passing on those parts, and the next thing they were doing is down at a festive board, they were having fun. That was their purpose of being there. You need to make sure that you mentor these guys so that they have the right knowledge to become everything that they can possibly be. You need to become very aware of the Washington Masonic Code. There's opportunities all over the place for you to share what our national and our fraternal landmarks are. And I'm not talking, everybody know what a landmark is? I'm not talking about monuments. I'm not talking about the George Washington Memorial. I'm not talking landmarks.
Historic standards.
The historic standards that make us us. There is, within Anderson's Constitution, look it up, okay, list out our landmarks. You will not talk about religion, is a landmark. You will not discuss politics, is a landmark. Your behavior in lodge will be respectful, a landmark, okay?
It's in the back of the Masonic Code also.
I wanted to find it.
Oh,
Okay. And I want you to pay particular and close attention to the last one. Whether you guys are typically wardens and deacons, If you don't know your own bylaws, how will you ever maintain your own legality? Lodges get themselves into trouble, not by telling Grand Lodge to go take a flying leap, but because they don't follow their own bylaws and their own standing resolutions. Because they don't know. Take the time. If you were a candidate and when you were raised, if they didn't give you a copy of your lodge bylaws, they made a mistake. Go ask them. Go ask them. Our visions. Freemasons will be recognized as a relevant and respected fraternity committed to attracting and retaining, one underline retaining, men of high quality who strive for self-improvement and the opportunity to make a positive difference within their community. Brother, isn't that what we're all about? Wouldn't it be our duty to uphold this by everything we do in Freemasonry, every day, every way? If you're planning on visiting a foreign lodge, make sure that they're not clandestine. And this is where I get a little animated. Follow me along. If we talked about this yesterday, don't answer. How many Grand Lodges operate in this state? How many? One? One. Free and accepted Masons of Washington.
No, two.
Two. Prince Hall. Co-Masonry. You know what co-Masonry is? They raise women. Yeah. They have the same morals and tenets and everything else, but they'll make a woman a Master Mason and call her brother. Yeah, I think that turns me off right away, okay? You guys smell way too good or much too soft to be called brother. Okay? Another one? Yeah. Masons, Freemasons of America, Grand Lodge of America, will raise an atheist. And are they operating in this state? Yes, they are. Co-Masons operate not only in Tacoma, but in Spokane. Grand Lodge of America has a lodge in Seattle and Tacoma. Rather, you go walking down the street in Tacoma and you see the square and compasses up there, you don't recognize the name, you better be a little bit careful. You may be talking to a clandestine lodge. How many people have been out to the website Phoenix Freemasonry? Phoenix Masonry, I believe is what it's called. Phoenix Masonry.
What is it?
Phoenix Masonry.
Oh, Phoenix.
How many? Oh, good stuff. You darn right it is. They've got all sorts of history and all sorts of stuff. Co-Masons. Co-Masons. So you have to be a little bit careful when you're out dealing with some of these things. And now I want to talk about Prince Hall. There are lodges, Grand Lodges within the United States that do not recognize Prince Hall Masonry as being a legitimate and regular lodge. Anybody want to name those jurisdictions?
I can think of three.
Hit me.
Texas?
Texas. No.
South Carolina?
Texas actually recognized them just 2 years ago. But South Carolina?
South Carolina.
Alabama. Georgia. Mississippi. Tennessee. Anybody recognize anything that's a little bit common about those guys?
Well, to be a Mason, you got to be free white for 21.
It's interesting to me that Prince Hall is primarily black, and yet why is there a separate Grand Lodge for Prince Hall? Let me give you a little history on Prince Hall. Back in the revolutionary, I'm not talking civil, I'm talking about revolutionary times, there was a free African American named Prince Hall, and he belonged to an Irish military lodge. May not be the association that you would naturally make there, but that was the case. And he and,
They're listed on that sheet of paper I gave you.
I thought you were going to give me a number,
I can't give you the number. They're right
13.
there. 13 others.
No, I'm sorry, 50. No,
We'll read them off, we'll know what you're saying.
That's why I gave you the sheet of paper.
so here's the thing, Fred. I don't see your name on here.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Sorry.
Prince Hall, Buff Buffon, Peter Best, John Carter, Peter Freeman, Fortune Howard, Cyrus Johnbus, Thomas Sanderson, Boston Singer, Boston Smith, Cato, I want to say Spain, Prince Taylor, Benjamin Tiber, Richard Tilley, and Prince Reese belonged to an Irish military lodge. And what's going on at this particular time in history is that we're disgruntled. We're not happy with our king. There's going to be trouble. And there is. We prevail. And what do we do with the guys that are left over that were here on our land? We send them packing. So all the English and all the Scots and all the Irish and everybody else that supported England now is just kicked out. And now you've got these brothers belonging to an Irish military lodge that just went home. They're not Irish. I can tell. They're not Irish. I look at their names. They are not Irish. They're homeless. They don't belong in Ireland. They belong here. Now what? They formed their own lodge. African
One.
number one.
Africa one.
Africa one. Thank you. Africa one. But they don't have legitimacy. They don't have a Grand Lodge charter issued them from another Grand Lodge. So what they do is they go in, I think it was Pennsylvania, Michigan, one of those, and they go, we want to form up as a lodge. We actually got ourselves already organized, we just need a Grand Lodge. And what do we say to them?
No.
You traitor. You were with those English. No, we're not giving you a charter. One of the Grand Lodges actually gave them a charter and then took it away, but no, you're loyalists. We're not giving you squat. Go away. Now they really are homeless. Eventually they got and received dispensation to form a Grand Lodge of their own, but from the Grand Lodge of England. Wait a minute. Didn't we just throw those guys out? Why would we want to give them recognition, those dirty traitors? No. It's a political thing, brethren. It never, ever was, from its origins, a thing about race or religion. It was political. And yet, we've got a couple of jurisdictions that, because of the Civil War, have taken that and subverted it to become a racial thing. I'm here to tell you that Washington, the jurisdiction of Washington, was one of the earliest to grant recognition to the Grand Lodge, Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Masons. We were threatened. Most other Grand Lodges, I won't say most, but a great good number of Grand Lodges threatened to excommunicate us, cut off all relationships, not communicate with us any longer if we did. And I'm sorry to say we backed off. And then again, in the 80s, we just stood up on our own 2 feet and going, you know, the right thing to do is give recognition to Prince Hall Masons. And we did. We got the same threatening letters and we go, oh well, c'est la vie. And so we stuck to our guns. Nobody excommunicated us. They knew in their hearts it was the right thing, except, want to name them off again? Alabama, Georgia? Okay, those guys. Okay? So if you somebody says, well, why are there two Grand Lodges and why are there the Black Masons separate? You can look people right in the eye and going, it's because of England.
Sam, did you know that the current master of the Fred U. Harris Lodge in Olympia is white?
Did you know that it is the Grand Lodge, the Prince Hall Grand Lodge, that says you'll only belong to one lodge only, which is why you don't see a lot of commingling.
Correct.
We don't care, but if you were to go join Prince Hall Lodge, they're going to ask you to demit from your others.
Right.
Wait, let me get Fred.
Right now,
Take care of Fred.
the way they say it is, you know, it's Prince Hall Lodge, Grand Lodge of Prince Hall, Masons of Washington and jurisdictions. The jurisdictions are the number of military Prince Hall lodges throughout the world.
And there's a bunch of them.
And you can join, a lot of military men, white, join a Prince Hall Lodge overseas, somewhere else. And then when they come back to the States, they want to join a regular Blue Lodge. And Prince Hall gives them a letter of dismissal.
Yep.
Once their petition has been read in that Blue Lodge, and they are accepted, then Prince Hall will issue a letter of dismissal to them, because we can't be a Prince Hall and a member of a Blue Lodge.
Yeah. Real quick.
Has the Grand Lodge of England recognized Prince Hall yet?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Was this done in the 70s or 80s?
Wouldn't it be really bad if after giving them, you know, a dispensation to form their own Grand Lodge, that they said no? But, so they for a long, long time.
Okay, yeah, I was under the impression for several years they hadn't because there was some,
No.
465 is
Yeah.
Prince Hall Lodge, the original one. It's number 465 on the British. You got it.
You know,
You got it written down.
you're gonna make me look that up, Fred?
It's on your notes.
Oh, I can't find my notes.
Yeah, it's 465.
I think it's, so they were granted a dispensation for their own lodge, and I think it was number, I don't remember the name now, number 459 or something like that.
Something like that.
Back in the early 1700s. So, brethren, that's Freemasonry 101. It's not anything more than to just let you guys know that you're not as boring as you think you are. You have a very diversified, and in some cases, contemptuous, contestuous history. And now it kind of, maybe you understand why we are like we are in some of our rules and regulations as far as Grand Lodge and alcohol, religion, and politics. What I'm hoping is that that will pique your curiosity to go off and explore more. There is tons and tons and tons of stuff, historical stuff, on the internet. With this caution and admonition, you may want to go back and check and verify your sources. A lot of it's true and a lot of it is made up. I suggest, quietly, that you go explore some of the other Grand Lodges that operate in the state, just so that you'll know who and what they are. The Grand Lodge of America claims George Washington as one of their founding members. So do Co-Masons. So do we. So does Prince Hall. And yet, we don't recognize them as regular. You should know who they are, where they are, and what they're up to. I was flying back from Atlanta, sitting right next to a woman, and she looks down and she sees my ring, and she goes, "Oh, you're a Mason?" And I go, "Yes, I am." And she goes, "So am I." She goes, "What lodge do you belong?" And I said, "I belong to Everett 137. She goes, "Well, are you F and AM?" And I'm going, if you understand that we don't recognize Co-Masonry, you'll understand why I cannot answer that question. And then we began to talk about the weather and a book that she had read. You can talk to anybody about anything. You cannot talk to irregular lodges, clandestine lodges, about Masonry. They're good people. They're just misguided. Or we are. Okay, we have 5 minutes for questions.
Just one thing that was missed in the
Oh, I missed a lot.
Revolutionary War era, 13 colonies getting together to form the Constitution. Where did they meet and who presided over the 13 colonies? It was a master mason, he was the master of the Virginia Lodge.
Yeah.
Who else would they turn to? Lead the country?
Except Masonry to use as an organization and structure. Brethren, if you have the opportunity, you really need to mark out your calendars for that last full week in September. You're going to get so much of this history and a lot more, and you'll be standing in the place that it all happened. I'll have to say one thing, Jim, before you do that. Years ago, Vicki and I had the opportunity to go out, and we had the opportunity, the Grand Master had the opportunity to lay a wreath on George Washington's tomb. And as the Grand Orator at that time, I was given the opportunity to orate standing next to George Washington's remains. You cannot believe how humbling that truly is. And at the time, I'm going, I have arrived. For me, there can be nothing higher. Brother, you will be, you go sit in George Washington's pew where George Washington sat and tell me you are not humble. Okay, so